Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game. It was played in the finals of the 2018 Speed Chess Championship on chess.com, and it's a game between Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces and Wesley So. Now you've already seen that Nakamura defeated Levon Arnyan in the semifinals, and Wesley So has defeated Jan Krzysztof Duda also in the semifinals, so this is the clash in the finals. We're gonna talk about the results of the match after you see this game, but it's really a wonderful game, so I really do hope you enjoy it. And sorry about no video yesterday. I'm preparing something that I'm sure pretty much all of you are going to enjoy, and I'm spending a lot of time preparing it. So, but we're gonna get back to that in some 2 days. So also I will include a link to this article on chess.com by Peter Dodgers. It will be in the description below, so feel free to check that out as well. Now, without further ado, let's check out this very nice game. So Nakamura has the white pieces, and he opens with e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. So the Ruy Lopez is on the board. Sorry about that. a6, Morphy's defense. We have bishop captures, d captures, and now castles. And here there are a lot of moves possible here, like bishop to e6, bishop to d6 are possible. f6 has been played, but here we have queen to f6. A very nice move by Wesley that pretty much forces a queen trade. With the idea that bishop is coming to g4, and here you want to trade the bishop for the knight and also trade queens. And while white can prevent this with something like h3, then black will simply develop, and after something like d3, h6, knight bd2, black can go queenside castle, and black will actually have a very nice game with a lot of development. So I'm sure it can be played, but most people don't do this. So d3 is played by Nakamura. We have bishop to d6, knight bd2, knight e7, and now comes knight to c4. A very nice move, threatening the bishop on d6 and also putting more pressure on the pawn on e5. Bishop to g4 as planned now. Wesley wants to exchange queens. We have h3, bishop captures on f3, queen captures on f3, queen captures, g captures, and here this move was played a few times before, and this position has been reached by several other players, but here after castles we have a completely new game on our hands. And Nakamura goes for f4. We have e captures on f4, knight captures on d6. This was pretty much planned. C captures on d6, and now bishop captures on f4. And here, after all is said and done, you have an endgame where the material on the board is equal. Both players with 2 pawn islands. Difference is there are 4 pawns on the queen side and 3 pawns on the king side for Wesley, and this huge pawn chain stretching from A to F for Hikaru, and then an isolated H pawn on the king side, and of course a bishop against a knight. So we'll see how it goes. Rook 8 to d8 by Wesley, and here we have rook to e1. We have rook to d7. You could push it immediately, but then you have to calculate what happens if the bishop to c7 or bishop to g5. So here, putting the rook to a nice light square avoids any need for calculations. Bishop back to g3. We have d5. Now comes f3, and now f6, enforcing the e5 square, but also making room for the king to be able to enter the game. Rook to e2. We have king to f7, and now rook 8 to e1. Nakamura doubles on the e file. We have g5, and now comes e5. F captures on e5, rook captures on e5. We have h6, enforcing the g5 pawn, f4. And now, although it seems like Wesley's position is much more passive, the rooks aren't really doing all that much, the knight is not all that impressive on e7, and Hikaru has very nicely doubled rooks on the e file. So doesn't really seem like black has much, but Wesley is actually able to play this out. He simply plays knight to g6, attacks the rook, also comes with a double attack against the f4 pawn, and here if white simply retreats with the rook, this rook is coming to d7, the knight is controlling e7, and it will be very easy to trade material here. So Nakamura decides to trade material his own way. Rook to f5 check, king to g7, and now comes rook captures on f8. King captures on f8, and now f captures on g5. H captures on g5, and now again we have a position where there's the material is completely equal. Four pawns on the queen side each, 1 pawn on the king side each, and again we have a bishop against a knight. And while this position is pretty equal, if the game is being played on both sides of the board and the position is pretty open, then a bishop will always be slightly better than a knight. So let's see how Nakamura does this. We have king to g2. Of course, you want to start bringing your king into the game. Rook to f7, not allowing the king to enter the game via the f file. Bishop to d6 check. We have king to g7 and now king to g3. Nakamura continues bringing his king all the way up to the g pawn. Perhaps if he can get king g4 and king g5, it will be excellent for him. Wesley goes knight to h4. He makes room for his own king to enter the game via g6 to protect the g5 pawn. King to g4, and here already the game would be much more equal if Wesley proceeded with care. Here he played king to g6 and he simply allowed Nakamura too much. A much better idea would be an active defense with rook to f2, going after Nakamura's queenside pawns. And here it's very interesting, but after bishop to g3, attacking both the rook and the knight, rook to g2, not allowing bishop captures here, it seems like white is now able to start picking up the queenside pawns faster than black. But the problem is if rook to e7 check, king f6 and rook captures here, then you get this terrible problem. Knight to f5, and now the threat is the rook captures on g3 checkmate. So the rook will never be able to start picking up these pawns. And here you will not have any defense, you will simply have to move your king, give up the bishop, and lose the game onwards. So here you would not be able to go rook to e7 check and pick up the pawns, you would have to play passive, and the game would continue in an equal manner. Here, like we said, king to g6 was played by Wesley, and Nakamura immediately went rook to e6 check. So rook to f6 blocking, we have rook captures, king captures, and now the rooks are off the board. But now with the rooks off the board, a bishop is actually much better than a knight. So here Nakamura plays a very nice move, and feel free to pause the video here, as this is basically the only move that allows Nakamura to play for advantage. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to do it. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are a remarkable endgame player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop to c7. As the king occupies this position on a dark square on f6, the threat is bishop to d8 check and picking up the g5 pawn, as the king is already attacking the g5 pawn. So there's really no good way to prevent this. King to g6 is played, we have bishop to d8, and now comes knight to g2. Wesley will now try to pick up Hikaru's queenside pawns. We have bishop captures on g5, now comes knight to e1, attacking the c2 pawn. And Hikaru, as this is the endgame and you do have a passed pawn, passed pawns must be pushed, so h4. We have knight captures on c2 and now h5 with check. King to h7, and now comes bishop to d2. Again, an excellent move, taking away a lot of squares from this dark knight. So the only way for this knight to get back into the game is via the d4 square. And it's very nice how Hikaru will use this attempt of the knight to get back into the game to improve the position of his king. So knight to d4 by Wesley, so, and now comes king to f4. Knight to e6 check, king to f5. Hikaru simply keeps on improving the position of his king. Knight to c5, and now comes d4. We have knight to e4, and now comes bishop to f4. And now, okay, Hikaru did make a lot of improvements here, but still, it's not all that clear. How do you push this pawn? The king is in the path on a light square, you can't move it with a dark square bishop. So it's very instructive how Hikaru continues to play this game. We have knight to f2 by Wesley, and now comes b3. Wesley decides to bring the knight back, as now the a2 pawn is a very nice target. We have knight to e4, king to e6, and now this is very important. Here Hikaru decides to start attacking the base of the chain with his king, because the black king cannot approach the h5 pawn. The bishop and the h5 pawn are creating a wall here against the black king, so the black king can never approach the h5 pawn. And also the bishop doesn't allow the knight to move to g3 to attack the pawn. So knight to c3 goes after the a2 pawn, but now a4. We have a5 here, and here comes king to d7. b5 by Wesley, and here we have a very critical moment of the game. where Hikaru has to decide how to proceed. His position is completely winning, but it's probably very often, if you play a lot of chess, chances are you will probably get into an endgame like this, and you want to know how to react. Not in a position that is exactly the same as this one, but perhaps in a similar position, and you will be able to draw on, some pattern recognition techniques to play out your own game. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the winning move for white. For those of you who were able to do it, once again, you are a remarkable endgame player, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's really not all that difficult. Bishop to d2. You simply attack the knight is undefended, and if the knight moves, let's say knight here, you simply capture the a5 pawn. And now after captures, you have a passed h pawn, and also a passed a pawn. And after the king attacks the h pawn, you will simply move the bishop, and there's really no good way for the knight to catch the pawn. This pawn is simply becoming a queen. On the other hand, after bishop to d2, if you protect the knight, if you don't move it, then it's pretty much all the same. King captures on c6, and black doesn't have any good moves. The knight can't move, it has to protect this pawn, and the king will simply go here, pick up this pawn, get out of the way, and then queen the a pawn. It's very easy. But here Nakamura did not play bishop to d2, he played a different, very creative move. He played b4. And b4, especially for a blitz game, it's very hard to counter this move. Wesley played b captures on a4. And then Nakamura created a pass pawn with b captures on a5. The problem why bishop to d2 was better than Nakamura's idea, instead of Wesley's b captures on a4, had Wesley played a captures on b4, there would be a lot more game to this. White would still be winning, but he would have to work much harder for his meal. Because after a5 and now b3, yes, you do stop the passed pawn with bishop to c1. But now after knight to a2 attacking the bishop to a3, you have knight to b4. And now black successfully prevents the white pawn from being pushed to a6, and you can never capture the knight, because then you cannot prevent this pawn from queening. So here white would have to continue the game in a different manner, but in the end most likely would still win it. But better to win the game immediately, so that's why after this b5 move, bishop to d2 would have been immediately winning. But okay, b4, we have b captures on a4, Wesley captures the wrong pawn, we have b captures on a5, and now a3. Nakamura has to play bishop to c1, so he can meet a2 with bishop to b2. Wesley goes for it, a2, bishop to b2, attacks the knight, knight to a4, and now bishop to a1, preventing the pawn from being pushed to a1, but also controlling the squares the knight can jump to. Also, you can see that this pawn is controlling c5, and this pawn is controlling b6, so the knight can't really move anywhere. We have c5 by Wesley, and simply a6 by Nakamura. He continues pushing his pass pawn. C captures on d4, we have a7, Wesley pushes d3, and in this position, if you thought white should play a7 and bring a queen into the game, black would really just laugh at you, and you would lose terribly, as you would fall victim to knight to b6 check. You would have to move the king, and then knight captures the queen, and then black would simply win the game and continue to laugh at you. But after d3, if you simply decided to move the king, let's say king to c6, like Nakamura did in this game, now there are no tricks with knight to b6 check, and it was in this position on move 53 that Wesley so resigned the game. Now, going into the results of this match, in the 5+1 portion, the match ended equal. I believe the result was 5-5. In 3+1, also the result was equal. I also think it was 5-5 or 4-4. It was only in the bullet section that Nakamura was better than Wesley So, and I believe he won by a 3-point margin. So yeah, I mean, definitely a tough match for Wesley. He proved that he can take Hikaru in 5 minutes and 3 minutes, but not in bullet. But very few people can do that, obviously, one of them being Magnus Carlsen. And I mentioned in my previous video that the only person Hikaru lost in the Speed Chess Championship was Magnus Carlsen, but he actually lost to him twice, in 2016 in the finals and in 2017 in the finals, although in 2016 it wasn't yet called the Speed Chess Championship. It was it had a different name. But yeah, he did lose to him twice in chess.com's finals of this event competition. But yeah, that's basically the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Hikaru Nakamura is the 2018 Speed Chess champion, so we'll see if he will be able to continue this run next year, and perhaps he will have to face Magnus Carlsen again, because this year Magnus Carlsen did not compete for some reason. Maybe they said why. I can't really remember. But yeah, that's the game. And I also wanted to show you what I received today. I received my exclusive photos of Bobby Fischer. There you can see by Harry Benson. It features a lot of cool photos never before seen by Bobby. I mean, I've seen them on the internet, some of them, but not all of them. Really a wonderful piece, and I'm very happy to have that. And on a completely non-chess related subject, I also received my Infinity Gauntlet, so very happy to get into that as well. You know, to prepare for all the movies, as I've never really been into comics, but I'm very happy to start reading this one. So yeah, just wanted to share that. I would like to thank Whitback Holding, Oliver Purge, Volvi, Michael Sterling, and Peter Mataga for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with some more interesting content. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon.